Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Air Force Culture and Language Center, my name is Lori Quiller, and I'm with the outreach team. Welcome to AFCLC's Language Division's LEAP Live event. It's my pleasure today to introduce our guests, Senior Master Sergeant Gary Woo and Master Sergeant Drew Nauman, and we will be discussing the Enlisted International Affairs Specialist Program. Senior Master Sergeant Woo is the Air Force International Enlisted Engagement Manager for the Deputy Undersecretary for the Air Force International Affairs and the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force. He supports collaboration with partner enlisted forces to strengthen relationships and further partner nation enlisted force development. He also serves as Senior Enlisted Leader to SAFIA, supporting talent management initiatives for the Air Force International Enlisted Airmen. Master Sergeant Drew Nauman is the Deputy Career Field Manager for the International Affairs Enlisted Engagements Career Field at the Office of the Deputy Undersecretary of the Air Force International Affairs. He is a member of the Pennsylvania Air National Guard's 193rd Special Operations Wing and has more than 16 years of experience as a Special Operations Medic and International Health Specialist. In his civilian role, he serves as a Senior Fellow at the National Center for Disaster Medicine and Public Health and Senior Strategy and Operations Advisor at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. Before we begin, please remember these simple rules. Maintain principles and standards of professional behavior and communication. Please mute your mics while others are speaking. Hold all of your questions until the end of the brief and use the chat feature to submit your questions to the moderator at that time. Follow proper OPSEC procedures and guidance, and remain cognizant that Facebook is an unclassified medium. Failure to abide by these rules will cause you to be removed from this briefing and considered for removal from the LEAP private Facebook page. With these rules in mind, Senior Master Sergeant Woo, over to you and Master Sergeant Nauman for the presentation.
Hey, thanks so much. As mentioned, Senior Master Sergeant Woo, International Enlisted Engagements Program Manager here at the Pentagon and then SAFIA, and joined by my teammate in SAFIA, Master Sergeant Drew Nauman. And we're really happy to be here. And thanks to everyone for joining us. And I appreciate everyone's interest in the program. And special thanks to Ms. McCurry and Ms. Quiller for inviting us and setting this up. So today, we just hope to talk about the program, give an overview of what the IEEM program is, or the 9 Lima program, and you'll hear me kind of refer to those interchangeably throughout, why it's important, how we can accomplish or how we go about accomplishing the mission set that we're charged with, and then we'll at the end we'll talk about where it's likely headed in the future. And maybe most importantly to the group here is really be able to talk through and answer some questions on how to participate with us, with the mission set, in the present and the future, and then or perhaps even become 9 Lima 100 in the future. So I'm not sure exactly where the slides are, but if we can go ahead and perfect. Yep, so that's us there, Air Force International Enlisted Engagements Program. Next slide, please. So just talk about kind of an overview here, where we come from and sort of the genesis of this. So a Chief Master in the Air Force Chartered Program back in 2013. And the idea is to foster partner nation enlisted force development. So why enlisted force? Similar to us in the United States Air Force, most air forces, the population of their air forces is about 80% of that force. So a huge swath, and really, I think the enlisted, as probably most people on this call realize, is really where the rubber meets the road, right? Where really the technical, hands-on, collaborative and cooperative I guess collaborative and cooperative engagement happens, whether that's turning a wrench or subject matter exchanges, etc. throughout. But with that, right, the idea to promote interoperability and standardization between the two forces is key. And then build a mutual understanding, confidence, and respect. And that's based on those shared values between the two or multi forces that are involved. And it's just not for the benefit, right, of the foreign ally or partner. It's to prepare, our NCOs and senior NCOs with those personal and professional relationships to succeed and be able to participate and be a part of opportunities involving those multinational operations. So small reporting identifier, the 9 Lima 100 series, or International Enlisted Engagements Manager, and 18 senior NCOs, primarily of those 18 senior master sergeants have served as IE managers since 13. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? Kind of 3 pillars. Senior enlisted key leader engagements. That could be everything from a office call, VTC, a counterpart visit, whether we're hosting here in the States or whether we go or the senior leader goes OCONUS to the host nation facilities. And then large gatherings, right, either regionally or globally. We just completed the Senior Enlisted Leader International Summit, where we had 62 Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force counterparts join us here in DC, take a part in what was the largest DAF international engagement, senior leader engagement to date. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, professional development opportunities. So whether mill-to-mill engagements, like we talked about, kind of the turn in the wrench, those key leader, or excuse me, those subject matter expert exchanges, or information exchanges, and then mobile training teams. So think, a small team, say for example, from senior NCOA were to go out to country X and kind of show them how we go about EPME from a U.S. Air Force perspective, and give them an opportunity to either, further build out their facilities and their teams and their programs, or perhaps like a train the trainer type event. So that's kind of what we mean by those professional development opportunities. And then finally, partner attendance at Air Force enlisted PME courses. So for those that have attended senior NCOA, you've likely had a partner or ally in your classroom. Currently, there's 36 that are slated to attend annually, and so you likely had 1 or 2 in your larger class, if not in your actual flight. Also, ALS and NCOA working exchanges with those partners and allies as well. And it's not just attendance, international attendance at our schools. It's also us attending international schools. Now that's been slowed a little bit by COVID, and we're trying to get that ramped back up. But that is definitely one of our methods that we go about accomplishing this. And then, as you see there, we really like to think that and say that the program serves as the connective tissue between strategic objectives and force providers. So kind of what all this looks like is a country will say, hey, we would really like to talk to the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. How do we go about doing that? That's worked at the regional level, at the air component level, work through their embassies, et cetera. And then it kind of comes across our desk, and we're able to kind of put all the right stakeholders in the room together. Also, if they were to say, hey, we would love to send a couple of folks to, say, for example, First Sergeant Academy down there in Maxwell. Same kind of process, official requests from the nation, work through the embassies, work through, the theater security cooperation plans, and the regional air components, and then us as the 9 Limas kind of put all the stakeholders in the room together to get that individual or those individuals into the class. That's done with a lot of coordination, AFSAT, Air Force Security Assistance Training, and those folks. So that's kind of how we do what we do. And then next slide. So like I mentioned, the SELIS, so Senior Enlisted Leader International Summit, we just wrapped that up, and I see a few familiar faces. I'm glad to see that it was, you kind of came back for more to hear me, been hearing me speak all last week, and I appreciate you coming back to hear me talk a little bit more of Drew and I for the next hour or so. But as you can see there, it was it's a forum of international command senior enlisted leaders, again, the largest of its type ever hosted by the DAF. And that's allowed to allow the contingent of these SELs to meet and greet, discuss issues affecting the international community, specifically where enlisted airmen and enlisted related topics are concerned, and then build those counterpart relationships. I think what really kind of aim there is there's a saying that says, you don't want your first phone call with someone to be in the middle of the night in a crisis. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to build that relationship kind of in a safe and neutral environment with ground speed 0, and that's what we aim to do with events like SELIS. And I think as the feedback is rolling in from SELIS, I think it was a success. Like I mentioned, we brought in 62 partner nation SimSAFs and the NATO AirCom CCEL, and we had a wide host of really a whole of government presenters from SECAF to CSAF to the National Security Council, from the Office of the President, a couple of New York Times bestsellers talking about countering foreign disinformation. So very topical, current concerns were addressed and workshopped and talked through, to include various regional breakouts where they could talk sort of regional priorities, issues, and concerns. We also featured an exhibit hall with about 20 or so security cooperation force providers, and those are folks that you may have heard of, like the Inter-American Air Forces Academy, IAFA, the Inter-European Air Force Academy, IEFA, some of actually both of the MSASs, the 571st and 818 Mobility Support Advisory Squadron, plus a whole host of Guard and Reserve, special operators that really brought a joint and total force component to show why America is the preferred partner internationally. Next slide, please. So yeah, again, 2013 was the first position. It was created by Chief Master of the Air Force. In 2017, we had a IEE ConOps, and that was signed by SimSAF Wright and the SAF IA Deputy Undersecretary at the time is Heidi Grant. And where the new one is in revision. It seems like just about the time we get ready to roll it out, something new and exciting, and new developments come along that are going to make this a much better thing. So we kind of have to circle back on it, and Sergeant Nauman will talk about some of those I think exciting things that are coming down the pike for us. But nonetheless, where we stand right now is we have 8 active duty senior master sergeant authorizations. So myself here at the Pentagon as the program manager and providing SimSAF SimSIF support. We actually now have 2 active duty senior master sergeant authorizations at PACAF, that's at Hickam. 1 at USAFEF Africa with 2 Guard partners. One has the Africa portfolio and one has the Europe portfolio, and we're looking to grow that even further, either with RegAF, with our RegAF counterparts, or really kind of solidify the Guard's role there in USAFEF Africa. 1 individual down at Shaw working the AFCENT portfolio, Again, looking to add a master sergeant, a Reg AF master sergeant here in the near future there. And then really at AF South, it's our largest group. So we have one senior master sergeant there. He actually just promoted to chief. He's headed out. We have his replacement. She's in the seat, and then a couple master sergeants, Reg AF, that are there already as well, with one tech sergeant, which our only tech sergeant. He's actually a 9 Lima 000, so interpreter translator, but working in that shop. AF North was a theater security cooperation advisor position. We've since just converted that to a 9 Lima 100 proper, if you will. And actually that job just went live on Talent Marketplace. So this morning, so if you are a senior or senior select, that's an opportunity for you to get involved if that's something you're interested in, and definitely happy to talk offline and kind of give you the scoop on that if you'd like. And then our newest position is at AFSAT, so the Air Force Security Assistance Training Squadron down at Randolph. That's a brand new position. And what that will likely end up being is, so the principal that they'll support there is the AETC command chief, but really kind of focus on the programs and processes of some of the nuts and bolts and some of the exchanges, et cetera, that we talked about earlier. And that'll be kind of their role, as well as having some AFSAT responsibilities there as well. So yeah, pretty cool. We're growing. When I first started, I guess 2 years ago this month, we only had 5, and that was it, just 5 active duty seniors. And so we've grown, we've almost doubled, and I think we're probably double again this time next year. And then let's see what else about these authorizations. So these are all the leads, or the SELs, for their various organizations. So like Ms. Quiller mentioned the SEL here at SAF-IA. For example, the AF North one that just advertised is the A589 SEL, et cetera. So an opportunity not just to work security cooperation, but an opportunity to kind of check that box for the SEL, the SEL box. I kind of saw a question there that kind of popped up, and I can only read it briefly. Currently, these are all Air Force positions, and there has been talk about having guardians come in. I think, I'm not a guardian, and by no means am I, authorized to speak on guardian or Space Force personnel moves. But I think right now, with it being as lean as it is, maybe not in the near future, would a guardian, be allowed to apply for something like this? But I think in the future, definitely. And we'll circle back to that question if I didn't get it. And kind of one that popped up here also that I'll talk about quickly. Yeah, so these are not, so any AFSC can apply for these. So for myself, and I'll talk a little bit kind of how I got here. I'm a C-17 loadmaster by trade. The individual at PACAF is a life support individual. USAFEF Africa is also a loadmaster. Just coincidentally, AFCENT is civil engineering. AF South is Intel. The new AF South senior, she has some first sergeant background as well. And AF North is a medic by trade, and then the AFSAT is to be determined. I know that's actually in the boarding process right now, and I know a couple of the front runners for that job are maintainers. So any AFSC is welcome to apply. In the package, we kind of look for some security cooperation experience. Language is also, language enabled is also a plus, and definitely a feather in your cap. But I will say that Spanish is required for the AF South job and for the AF North job, with Brazilian Portuguese being highly desired. Yeah, looking for individuals with security cooperation experience. So working in embassies, working as an air advisor. That's kind of how I got the door open for me into the international affairs world, and similar types of background, right? So maybe you were stationed overseas and worked hand in hand with that host nation, in your particular job. So those skill sets, and Sergeant Nauman will kind of talk about where we're going and how we're going to refine that, so that we make sure that we get the best individual that's best qualified for the job. And so we're looking to refine that a little bit. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about what I do here at the Pentagon. Like I mentioned, SimSAF and SimSIF support. We kind of look at the broad strategy of enlisted airmen, enlisted international airmen, and kind of what those future roles will be. Obviously, work engagements, whether that's something, very large like CELUS, something overseas. Chief Master on the Air Force Bass just went overseas to South Korea. We were pretty heavily involved with that. She met with her counterpart there in the ROCAF. Or small, right? Maybe something as simple as an office call or VTC, and organizing those engagements. It can be everything from, no kidding, like checking the working with the distant end, the partner nation, to see if all the phone lines work and the Zoom cameras, et cetera, work. All that sort of stuff, up into, and primarily where we're really focused is getting those talking points, the prep, and making sure that we're strategically, the strategic message is aligned, really from the DAF and the Secretary of the Air Force, et cetera, on down, and making sure that we're in line with those efforts, particularly where the enlisted are concerned. Work a little bit of policy, so country agreements, and then work as a liaison with AFSAT. So trying to, again, put those stakeholders and all the right people in the right room together to get a project across the finish line. We don't have any, stamp that says, go, no go. But again, just like to consider ourselves the connective tissue to put the people that do have those stamps in agreement and with each other. And then, so similar to the policy part of it, work reciprocal exchanges for EPME, and then work some funding issues, and helping, whether, that's Air Force funded or partner nation funded, getting those individuals in the seat. Also serve as the career field manager for the report identifier. So while I'm not the hiring authority, definitely, make my recommendations, and help that individual, sort through some of those personnel decisions, shape the job descriptions, et cetera, because there is a lot of nuance between the various regions. Participate in various career field management forums, kind of, spread the good news about what we're doing here, and the enlisted security cooperation realm, as well as, where need be, work with the losing, if you will, CFM, to help facilitate an individual that is interested and that is hired to come on board. Some things administratively, special duty assignment pay, which we are not receiving. We haven't received that for a couple of years now, but working any kind of, special duty assignment pay, things like the tabs that we're in a shoulder, just some of those sort of administrative sort of things, but things that are important nonetheless. And then really backstop all those regional enlisted engagements managers that we talked about before. So Sergeant Nauman will head over in September to help NATO Air Chiefs Conference. That's primarily USAFE Africa function. I'll kind of pick up the tail end of that with some travel that SimStaff has planned as well, and so backstop those folks as well. And then, like I mentioned, the senior enlisted leaders. So we've got about a dozen or so folks enlisted here at the Pentagon and JBAB, and then probably about another couple dozen or so kind of across the world that fall underneath our one stars MEL, and so provide that kind of SEL support as they are alone and unafraid across the globe. So the military personnel exchange program individuals, and then yeah, talent management, right, for enlisted international airmen here in the Air Force, and then hopefully one day across the DAF with the Space Force. And then, like I said, I'll save some of that stuff for Sergeant Nauman to talk through on how we're going to get after talent management moving forward. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then I guess that's a good segue to Sergeant Nauman. So I'll turn it over to him, and he'll give us kind of the update on where we are right now and where we're headed in terms of talent management and some of the force initiatives and development that we have currently going on. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Senior Woo. So Master Sergeant Drew Nauman, Guardsman on loan to SAF IA for a couple of years, and going to talk kind of briefly about where we're headed in the 9 Lima 100 career field. We kind of have a three-pronged approach that we're trying to take over the next couple of years to first expand the scope of the career field, second, professionalize the force, and third, increase the capability to support the COCOMs as well as U.S. Air Force organic programs as well. And so I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to do those things. So to date, there really is no, if you were to look in the AFECD, you would find no training requirements, very little requirements to come into the position. And so historically, we've tried diligently to get folks to have the right experience in the seat, but we're not uniformly successful. And also, there's a challenge that when we do bring folks into the seat that don't have, even folks that have a lot of security cooperation experience, but don't have kind of that strategic security cooperation experience, we don't have a mechanism to train them. And so we are actively working on doing those things. And so first I'll talk about kind of what we're going, expanding the scope. And so today the 9 Lima 100 is called the International Enlisted Engagement Manager, and really focuses on providing specific targeted engagement support to a principal senior NCO. But starting this next October, the AFECD will be revised, and it will expand the scope, entitled the 9 Lima 100, the Enlisted International Affairs Manager. And that position will be utilized for enlisted airmen that are in international affairs or security cooperation roles in the senior NCO grades. And so in order to kind of expand that, we are also working to implement our first ever career field education and training plan, which we hope will be rolled out in line with the release of the upcoming AFECD. And that CFETP will include a training pipeline for newly selected 9 Lima 100s that will include initial skills training, required advanced skills training, as well as optional advanced skills training. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the training when we finish up. And so the question probably is like, what are we looking to do with this expanded scope? And so I'll kind of list off some of the things that we're looking at having our enlisted international affairs managers capable of doing. So these are the capabilities that we came up with, and that is serving as an international affairs subject matter expert, serving as a subject matter expert in the transition from peace to war and from war to peace, developing IA-related policy and strategy, leading security cooperation planning efforts, overseeing the execution of security cooperation plans, conducting security cooperation assessments, managing security cooperation programs, managing security assistance cases, supporting commanders, supervisors, ambassadors as a staff officer, serving as an arms control inspector or analyst, serving as a political military affairs advisor, engaging directly with foreign partners, training foreign partners, serving as an air advisor, serving as the enlisted international affairs MAGCOM functional manager, and leading Enlisted International Affairs Manager Force Development. And so our intention, excuse me, our intention is that those the folks in the 9 Lima career field will kind of transition from just merely supporting a principal to also taking on the role as the MAJCOM functional manager for all enlisted international airmen within their MAJCOM. And so this will really, I think, down the road, turn out to be a mix of the foreign affairs officer, an enlisted version of the foreign affairs officer, and political military affairs strategist. But of course, that is down the road. And so I think that that the next question is like once we kind of have this stuff going, what is it that we can do to kind of increase our capability to support the COCOMs as well as organic Air Force functions? And so to that end, we're looking towards developing an enlisted international affairs UTC that could be utilized to support the COCOMs, but then also looking to really socialize the capability of our enlisted international airmen, so that commanders at all levels are aware of kind of what those capabilities are that exist at the MAJCOM and numbered Air Force levels predominantly, but then also in the National Guard state partnership programs. And you can and so I guess I'll kind of finish up this slide with saying in the future, particularly after October, what is it that we're looking for the new 9 Lima 100? So first and foremost, foreign language skills are very valuable. I think principally it shows that that you're really interested in foreign culture and language, and that you have some motivation to kind of get after this process. The next thing is undergraduate or graduate training in international affairs, security studies, or regional and cultural studies, which would really arm you with some kind of unique knowledge that would allow you to carry out the functions. The third thing is regional experience, and then the fourth thing is completion of senior enlisted joint PME 1 and 2, and the future developed joint PME courses, as well as we really anticipate that that the enlisted international affairs manager will kind of really become a force multiplier for the combatant commands with regards to engaging enlisted folks. And so many of you may be asking, why are we doing this? The first is we want to provide better support to our international to our senior enlisted leaders at the MAJCOM and COCOM level. Second is we want to kind of drive home that enlisted members of our force make up about 80% of the force, and enlisted members of our partner forces make up 80 to 90% of the force. And without a professionalized NCO Corps, really our military and the militaries of our allies and partners would be wholly unable to function. And we've seen solid examples of that in the current Russian incursion into Ukraine. And then really the third reason is because we understand that there are limiting factors on the officer side with their ability to have foreign affairs officers or political military affairs strategists supporting largely enlisted engagement functions. And so we want to be able to fill those roles as well. You can go to the next slide. So so here's kind of the blurb that's going to be in the AFECD for the new Enlisted International Affairs Manager position. And you can see that that while it hasn't changed significantly, it has broadened quite significantly from its previous statement. And one thing to note is that one of the mandatory requirements is eligibility for a TSSCI through a Tier 5 investigation. So not to limit the project or not to limit the position to only folks that are eligible, but many of the MAJCOMs require that for a position to hold the seat. Next slide, please. So then the other thing that we're working is developing this special experience identifier. I had mentioned previously that the regional 9 Lima 100s will become the MAJCOM functional manager for enlisted international airmen, and who those folks are the people who hold these special experience identifiers. So we've developed 2 SEIs that will go live. You see 31 October. The 2 Alpha 6 Basic Enlisted International Affairs Airmen, which is somebody that has an interest in IA and goes and takes the basic level certification in security cooperation, as well as the DLPT, the DLAB, and then the second is the Enlisted International Affairs Specialist, which will really be our kind of our capstone SEI for international affairs airmen, which will be folks that have some unique security cooperation skills by virtue of their job in the Air Force, or a high level of motivation, and can acquire the Security Cooperation Workforce Intermediate Level Certification, as well as a year of international affairs experience and a 1+1+ on the DLPT. So our intent as we release this is to develop a cadre of folks that have these kind of unique skills, these unique not only language skills, but also security cooperation understanding. And as we develop that cadre of folks, then allow the MAJCOM functional managers to utilize those folks for security cooperation purposes, but then also to socialize amongst commanders at all levels that within their units are airmen that have really unique international affairs skills. And the other thing I'll mention is that both of these SEIs are open to both airmen and guardians. So while we will not have initially any full-time positions for guardians, there is an opportunity for guardians to participate, and also the SEIs are not restricted by grade or AFSC. So anybody from an E1 to an E9 are welcome to participate and lend their unique expertise to the MAJCOM International Enlisted International Affairs Manager. Next slide, please. And so that we kind of wanted to close out with an opportunity to field questions. So Senior Woo and I are both happy to stick around and field any questions kind of about how things are currently or where we're headed in the future. And so for that, I guess I will turn over the time to any questions. Thank you. All right, so we got some questions in the chat, so I'll answer some of those.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions.
And then let's see. The first question is, how will this kind of integrate with LEAP? So to be determined. We're still kind of trying to get our feet under us with this, but our intent is that LEAP will be a solid feeder opportunity for folks to come into both the SEI as well as the 9-100 positions. And a good question about expanding to lower pay grades. So currently, the demand signal from the MAJCOMs is senior NCOs. However, if the demand signal changes, or there are other organizations such as DITRA that are interested in having positions, 9-100 positions at a lower grade, there's nothing that stops us from changing that. And the change process is actually relatively simple. We recently found out. So would love to hear feedback from those organizations if there were thoughts. But what we would say is that E6s that do have unique experience should take advantage of the SEI to really demonstrate to the future selecting officials your interest in security cooperation and foreign affairs.
We have one question that came straight to me. I don't think you can see it, sir, but it's, what is the AFI guides for this position?
It's a good question. So we currently don't have any, there aren't any AFIs or DAFMANs that govern the position or any of our enlisted international affairs airmen positions. However, our intention over the next year or so with Senior Woo, and then subsequently Senior Woo's replacement as he transitions out will be to develop a DAF man or to incorporate this into the existing International Affairs Airman DAF man. And of course, and I see a lot of questions regarding the positions. So, so while we control the positions here at the HAF level, at the SAF level, we are open to discussing the conversion of any current positions on any UMD to a 9-100 position. So if there are commanders or senior leaders that are interested in doing that, feel free to reach out to Senior Woo or I directly. No org box, it's just the two of us. So feel free to just hit us up. Yeah, happy to yeah. And so question, anybody able to take the courses for the SEI? Great question. Everybody is able to take the courses for the SEI. So for the kind of lower level SEI, those courses are actually self-paced virtual courses, online courses. And anybody can do those, and then take the D-Lab, so we would encourage folks to do that. For folks who would like to do the advanced SEI, that requires the intermediate security cooperation courses, and those courses are available through the Defense Security Cooperation University, Senior Woo and I would help facilitate folks to get into those courses once they've completed the lower level SEI. So folks who complete the lower level one, who want to take the more advanced one, would just have to contact our office, and then we would help get you into those courses. Those courses are generally offered virtually in a kind of live mechanism. So through the DSCU or in person in Crystal City at the Defense Security Cooperation University.
Hey, Drew, I kind of want to talk.
Go ahead, Gary.
One question here, and I think you probably answered it in the nuts and bolts of, is there a desired career path for these positions? So just going into kind of scope out a little bit and say, I would say that no, there's not a desired career path for these positions. I think there is a desired skill set, right? And what we've done with the SEI, and although it's not it's not going to be the fix that the magic wand, if you will, as we'll never be able to take things like just sheer timing, right, on where you are in your career and all the various nuances of that out of it. It is meant to be broad and adaptable, right? Because there are other parallel efforts across the DoD and even within the Air Force that aim to strengthen enlisted security cooperation and the enlisted security cooperation enterprise. So yeah, I think that I think a desired skill set and one that hopefully we can again put the right person in the right position if that time lines up. Kind of along another question about the time on station waivers. That's frustrating for us too, right? When the AFSAT job, there was some people that were very, very qualified for it, but just the timing and the time on station waiver didn't get worked out. So or couldn't be resolved at AFPC, right? So what I'd like to also kind of say in this briefing is we are trying to be more transparent and let everyone across the Air Force, across the DAF know that hey, that these opportunities do exist, but if you could take this and go back to your work centers and when you're on various light exchanges or light engagements around the world, bring this up to other elite members, right? And say, hey, did you know that these opportunities exist? And then we're happy to chase that down with them and get them in contact with us. this, and we can talk through specifics as we socialize it. So yeah, it's meant to be adaptable and flexible, like Sergeant Nauman mentioned. We are going to attempt to write a DAF man here, and we're going to do it, and obviously that'll go through probably a couple iterations and revisions over the next few years as we intend all of these documents and these updates to be living documents, if you will, that are adaptable and able to accelerate to meet the mission needs. And I'll pause there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you. That was great input. I'll answer a few more of these questions. That's good. Good.
While you're kind of looking through those, I see one more that talks about how does this program differ from the FAO, and will this ever be a permanent AFSC? So I think, like just Gary talking, I think that one day, whether it's 9 Lima 100 or something completely different, I think that it will be a permanent AFSC. I think that if you listen to Air Force, in particular, senior enlisted leaders and senior leaders writ large, I think that they talk a lot about a lot of AFSCs that exist today will not exist, with that airman or with the force of 2030, 2040. And AFSCs that don't exist now will then. I would like to think, again, just Gary's opinion, that this would be one of those, which is enlisted security cooperation and enlisted international affairs manager, for all those reasons that Sergeant Nauman mentioned, to complement the foreign affairs officer, and sort of that role and kind of what they've traditionally done. I will say that there's no requirement, right? There's no one that's saying, hey, we need an enlisted FAO out there. And so I think, as you kind of look at the timeline of this, an SEI, a special experience identifier, is kind of where we start. We really kind of hone in on what this reporting identifier is. I think maybe in 5 to 10 years, maybe this is a special duty and a special duty identifier and everything that comes along with that, right? Whether that's sort of the rank and sort of pyramid structure, if you will, of a SDI, as they maybe exist now, or something as simple as CCAF or international affairs, right? Something like that that maybe comes along with an SDI. And then I think maybe eventually a traditional AFSC, right? That's sort of that air quotes here, and I'm very careful to use this, but that enlisted FAO, right? So that enlisted international affairs manager. So the foreign affairs enlisted, and kind of that sort of that technician role. So yeah, I think that maybe 2040. I think it's again, just Gary speaking here, but I think it's likely, and that's kind of sort of the roadmap that we're going off of, and kind of what we're aiming towards. And as problem sets emerge and change, and obviously it's a dynamic environment, security cooperation, we'll make those adjustments, and those that come behind us will make those adjustments. But I think we're really looking to solidify and make the enlisted security cooperation enterprise, just really forge it and solidify it again, permanently. So I will say that. Back over to you, Drew.
Yeah, thanks.
Gentlemen, if I may, our language division chief is on the line and would like to make a comment. His name is
Sure.
Chris Chesser.
Hey, Mr. Chesser, how are you?
Hey, gentlemen. Thank you for your leadership with this program. We've been working from the AFCLC with SAF-IA since our inception, and beginning in 2014, as you may know, we began working with the FAO development and selection process. And this past year, of all officers selected for FAO, 72% were developed through LEAP, which is a really big deal. that really showed the value of LEAP scholars to FAO. And as I speak regularly with enlisted members in LEAP, they're very excited about this opportunity. In fact, this is the most highly attended online event of this type this year. I would say it might be the topic, but it could be your personalities that everybody's excited about. And maybe because of the star factor with you two gentlemen, but either way, this is really exciting for us to see the level of involvement from LEAP. And I think that we can accomplish a lot together, and I really look forward to helping provide some more in the weeds insight into some of the records that we track on LEAP scholars, so that we can not only help you select LEAP scholars for some of these positions, but also that we can help inform LEAP scholars of what they need to do to get involved with international affairs. Over.
Yeah, we appreciate that, sir. Just for a little bit of gee whiz information, although not ready for prime time, draft 1 of the CFETP, which will probably be at draft 100 before it gets released, but draft 1 has a strong preference for LEAP scholars for entry into the positions, and that really, I think, comes from our two things. One, our strong relationship between SAF-IA and AFCLC, but then also really our personal impression of individual LEAP scholars and the great work that they've done for us over the last couple of years. So a couple of other quick questions in here. So a question about security clearance for the SEI is not required. Well, secret like is required for all positions, but nothing higher. And the AFECD will be updated. It comes out 31 October. So all of the requirements will be in there 31 October and ready to go. But we're happy to, of course, share these slides, and I'm sure that the AFCLC folks would be happy to get them out to everybody that's on here. This question keeps coming up about senior NCOs. Our reasoning behind that really is just demand signal, and so if the folks who utilize these folks as the CFMs, in half, Senior Woo and I, our job really is to kind of develop and train airmen to meet the needs of our customers out in kind of the force provider world. And so really we just look at the demand signal from the folks who would actually use these positions. But we are not closed off to an idea that folks that aren't senior NCOs, any NCO could potentially fill a role if the demand signal was such that there would be a need for that. And so thanks, Tech Sergeant Avila. While there isn't particular training historically required for our folks, starting really hopefully with the release of the new AFECD, we will have an initial skills training and a required advanced skills training pipeline for all of our new 9 Lima 100 folks and anybody that's slotted in a 9 Lima 100 seat. And that training will include things like security cooperation training and kind of some basic training on kind of U.S. government policy, as well as international affairs and foreign policy training. And so our intention is to develop an optional certificate of completion for an Air Force enlisted international affairs fellowship for anybody who comes into a 9 Lima 100 position and then completes all of the initial skills training, the required advanced skills training, and the optional advanced skills training within the first 18 months of assignment. So that would be something that, of course, we would hope would be beneficial to airmen who come into these positions who then want to kind of either do something else in the Air Force or also go out into the civilian world. Go Go ahead.
Maybe I can add a little bit to that too. I think, big picture, and to kind of, like I mentioned, I'm a simple load master. So just to kind of the way I wrap my head around it is one, I think that one, frankly, we're trying to under promise and over deliver on a lot of this stuff. I think that, although they're lofty goals, I think they're achievable goals, but take those incremental important steps and make sure we get it right the first time, but remain agile enough to circle back on some things. I also think that at big picture, again, is to really the goal in all of this is to take, that 80% of the workforce that is underutilized at this point, in my opinion, or is not fully maximize either the skills that you bring into the Air Force or that you're trained in the Air Force, and one, track that, two, utilize it properly, and then three, professionalize it. So I think we've just about got the track part figured out. Like I mentioned, we'll need some help and sort of spreading the good news. But I think we got the track part figured out. I think that we're going to get the utilize part figured out once people, like, no kidding, have the paper to show that says, hey, this is why I'm qualified for this job, and this is why I can, why I'd be the perfect person for, X job. And then some of the cool things as we professionalize it, streamline it with, outside education, graduate education, opportunities to work, and some of the nuance levels and nuanced jobs of security cooperation. And so, but with all that, I think that it's important, right, to keep, to be able to be flexible and move in and out of these positions, particularly, as you're an NCO and moving into the senior NCO realm, right? So yes, I think that there's value in having a, no kidding, someone that's running the program. It's the people that are really fully dedicated to this long term, of course. But I think there's also a lot of value in still remaining a subject matter expert, and still checking some of those boxes that I think will benefit you in some of the strategic leadership that we're going to need down the road as we manage the Enlisted International Affairs program. Does that make sense? And I'll pause there.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning over here in Japan. This is Alam Kendi. Thanks, Drew and Gary, for all the information. I had a quick question or just clarification about the position. I believe one of the slides you briefed, Drew, stated that as a non-Lima, you still be able to compete in your original career field once this goes online. So I was just trying to get some clarification on that. And also, when do all the SEI awarding courses go online as well? And thank you.
So I'll answer the first one. Yeah, you will compete for promotion within your AFSC, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And then I'll let Drew speak to the second part there.
Yeah. So the second piece is the courses are live today. And so if you are interested in doing the basic security cooperation courses, I would find your way over to the Defense Security Cooperation University's website. And they're actually on the front page of the website, there is one that says SC 101, start here. Just click on the start here button and you'll find yourself taking a very exciting security cooperation course. And so we would, encourage anybody who has interest to go ahead and start getting the training done. And then as soon as the SEI comes out 31 October, we'd be thrilled to see a bunch of applications on 1 November. I guess looking forward to that. And just kind of as our last point, the SEI approval authority is SAF-IA. And so we will kind of take those applications or kind of proof of training completion, and then issue you a certificate that you can take to your training manager, who will, along with your 2096, to have the SEI added.
And one quick thing to add there. So the only gatekeeper for those courses is your direct supervisor. So you'll have to put in their information. But should you run into any issues accessing those courses, just reach out to Sergeant Nauman or I, and we'll work to get it figured out and get you signed up. So I'm getting the 1 minute. So is that all the time we have, Ms. Fuller?
Yes, sir. We've now gone to our 1 hour, and if I hate to cut it off because the conversation has been amazing. But for those of you who are still with us, if you want to go back and review the video, it will live online in the LEAP private Facebook group, which is where we streamed live to. And I see that you just posted your email addresses in the chat. So you can also communicate with our speakers today through their email if you have any specific questions for them. We will also try to find a way to get you their PowerPoint and get that to you as soon as we can. But I wanted to take just a moment here today before we sign off to say thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us today. This has been as Mr. Chester said, this has been the most active and largest audience that we've had since we started doing this program. And thank you so much for lending us your time and your talents and your information. It's been an amazing experience. And I know that everyone who's been online has really, really enjoyed it. I'd also like to thank our LEAP scholars who joined us today, AFCLC staff who are working and also were on the call, Ms. Michaela McCurry, who's behind the scenes, who we could not have done this without her. And she's my outreach partner as well. And we hope everyone has enjoyed today's presentation. Have a wonderful day. And remember, we are AFCLC, the Global Classroom.